So, Captain Riester, will you please give the viewers a nice background about yourself? Basically, where you're from, education, work experience, military experience, and your tenure at VMI?
Good afternoon. I'm being antagonized by Johnny Parton to do this project. I was a graduate of 1978 from VMI. I came down here from upstate New York, Rochester, New York. I then went in the Navy. Drove submarines for 10 years. I was the first nuke. Dave Cameron and I, Red Cameron, were the first nukes out of VMI because we had a brand new Navy program. So I drove submarines for 10 years. Got married. Wife outranked me. Got tired of saluting, so I got out. And anyway, actually I went out and became Mr. Mom. When I was Mr. Mom, I went back to graduate school, got a degree, and I've been back here for 21 years. Teaching in civil engineering. So I'm very happy to be here today with Mr. Parton.
So, Captain Riester, will you please tell us your most memorable literacy experience for the class?
Well, my father went to the Naval Academy. My grandfather went to the Naval Academy. You say, well, what's that got to do with literacy? Well, I was going to go to the Naval Academy, and I was destined to go to the Naval Academy. I had one problem. I can't hear in my right ear. And I never noticed it, but, I mean, people notice I can't hear, especially kids in class. But that's okay. But, so then I put in for the Service Academy. I put in for Army, Navy, Air Force, and the Coast Guard. And the day after Thanksgiving, a Friday, in the year 1973, I got 4 letters in the mail. Navy, Air Force, Army, Coast Guard, all telling me I was disqualified to go into their academy. And so I thought, well, this is a problem. And so then so obviously they don't understand. Yeah. So I'm going to write these people. I'm going to write the academies. And I had a nomination from my congressman. So I'm going to write my congressman and various things. So I began to write letters about why I should be given a waiver, Navy medicine and the Naval Academy admissions, and the congressman to maybe give me another waiver or a nomination to West Point since I had one in the Naval Academy, and just letters. Well, at the time I was terrible at writing. I could do the sentence structure thing, but my spelling was horrible. My spelling's still terrible, but now we have word grammar and all that good stuff. But my writing was terrible. And so I would write a letter, and back then we didn't have computers, and we didn't have things. So it was longhand on a piece of paper that looked like this. And I remember I like blue ink, so I always had blue pen, and these letters sometimes were 2 to 3 pages long, printing them on blank paper. They didn't even have lines. And so, because my dad thought that'd be more professional. So, you set it up from where it was from to who it was. And I would get the address, and I started writing these letters. And then I give it to my dad to proofread. And he would say, what are you saying here? You're not saying that at all, or this is spelled wrong. And unfortunately, to get a letter out of the house, only cost 5 cents for a stamp back then, but to get a letter out of the house used to take several iterations, and it was printed, and it was filled in pretty well. And so in all of this, I probably ended up writing about 20 letters to different things to try and get a waiver. Naturally, the waiver never did come, and I came to VMI, and you go in Washington Arch or Jackson Arch, I forget which arch, and it says you may become, or you may be resolved to be what's it say?
You may be what
you resolved to be. Anyway, I knew that was wrong because I resolved to go to the Naval Academy, and many years later, VMI has been very good for a lot of things. And when I got here, and I kind of felt, well, that statement is wrong because I resolved to go to the Naval Academy, but I wasn't going to the Naval Academy. But then I realized after a few years, and actually many years later, the great education I did get at VMI, because then I went to nuke school and I was just as good as the guy from Cornell and Harvard and MIT, and we had all these kids in our class, my nuke school class, and they weren't any better for nuke school than I was. But the one thing that did happen with all that is I learned to write, because when I was done with all those letters and my dad proofread and I redid and all that stuff, I learned to write. And to this day, I can now look back and, having this hearing loss. And then when I came time for my dissertation, and it was very easy to write that thing. And of course, I did a thesis as a master's student. So I constantly look back and say, the best thing that ever happened to me was this hearing loss. Because if I had not had to write all those letters, I never would have learned to write. Maybe I would have sometime later at grad school or something like that. But maybe not. Maybe that opportunity would never have come to me. And I know when I got to VMI, I did very well in the liberal art courses because I could already learn to write. And I still remember we used to do our English papers on Saturday mornings, and you'd go and you'd sit down with the professor and go over your paper. This is English 101. But I guess it was, I don't know, writing 101. And I still remember going down the stoop, and my brother Red Hardy'd be coming along because we were both in the same class, and I would be in like 20, 30 minutes after he was. And I'd always walk by him, and he'd say, I got an F, or I got a D or something. And I was always getting B's or A's. And so that's my story on literacy. Sometimes it's tough to just sit down and it's always, and in my case, I was lucky that my father was a very good writer. He was an engineer too, and frankly, to be a good engineer, you got to be able to write and sell your product. Do you have any other questions, Mr. Partin?
Yes. Could you tell us how this literacy experience has influenced your teaching here at VMI?
Well, I have a couple courses, and I like to make them writing courses. I have a paper in it, for instance, advanced fluids, and it's not required, but I still have them do a paper, and it's kind of fun because then I also make them stand up and present their paper, and it can be about anything dealing with fluids, so I enjoy that. I also teach the lab course, which we have a lot of writing, and I also teach the seminar course, which they all have to do a large technical paper in. So, and then, in the old days, when you put a permit in, if there was any misspellings or grammar errors, they threw it out. To take a weekend, you had to write a permit, and so they don't have that anymore. They have a computer now, but back then. And daggone, you better know how to write that permit correctly. Otherwise, if there was spelling or error, the commandant threw it out. So that's kind of fun. I just think it's across the board. You have to be able to sell your facts or your product, whatever you got going on there. And being able to be a good writer is very important. As a department head, you're always writing letters, recommendations for cadets going to grad school. So now it's no longer me and whether I care about writing, but it's for the young cadet that's coming in that's trying to go to grad school or med school or get a job with the Norfolk tug service. They need letters written, and I can tell you if your letter shows up and it's got misspellings in it, especially if you're applying for a job, it just goes in the trash can. So my feeling is my ability to write influences not only what I do in class, but also outside of class with cadets who are trying to get some good deal. Have you gotten into grad school, Mr. Partin?
UVA.
Thank you very much. Did I write you a letter?
Yes,
Thank
you
you did. All lies. Oh, excuse me. Misstatements.
Ooh. Well, thank you very much, Captain Riester, for this. And hopefully we'll be able to get this puppy uploaded on YouTube and put on the DALN for you.
I don't think that's going to happen. But anyway, you have a great day.